The studio lights were warm, softer than usual, and the familiar morning chatter carried a quieter tone. Viewers tuning in expected laughter, quick jokes, and the comfortable rhythm that had defined the show for years. Instead, there was a pause, the kind that makes everyone lean a little closer to the screen. Kelly Ripa sat beside Mark Consuelos, her smile present but gentler. Anyone who watched regularly could sense something different. Not dramatic, not alarming, just deeply human. Mark had just finished sharing a personal reflection live on air. It wasn't shocking news or a life-altering announcement. It was simply honesty. He talked about pressure, not from fame itself, but from trying to always be the strong one. He explained how people often assume confidence means you never doubt yourself, never feel overwhelmed, never worry about expectations. But sometimes, he admitted, even he struggled with that image. The audience in the studio grew quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet, attentive quiet. Kelly listened without interrupting. That alone said a lot. Normally, she would tease him or lighten the mood, but today she let the moment breathe. When Mark finished, he exhaled and laughed softly, almost embarrassed by his own vulnerability. "I don't know why I just said all that," he joked. Kelly shook her head gently. "I do, because you're human." For a moment, she didn't look at the camera. She looked at him, the same way she did years ago in old photos fans often shared online. Familiar, proud, understanding. She explained that viewers often see only the polished side of television, early call times, perfect lighting, quick humor, but behind it is effort, responsibility, and the challenge of showing up every day with energy even when life outside the studio feels heavy. People think we walk in smiling and it's automatic, but sometimes that smile is teamwork. Mark nodded. Their conversation shifted naturally, almost like they forgot they were broadcasting to millions. They talked about long careers, raising children while working unpredictable schedules, and the quiet moments after cameras turn off, the ones that actually matter most. Kelly admitted she admired that Mark chose to open up publicly, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. "You've always supported everyone else. Today, you let people see you too." The audience applauded, not loudly, but warmly. Instead of changing topics quickly, the producers allowed the conversation to continue. It became less of an interview and more of a reflection on partnership, both professional and personal. Mark explained that being on live television means there's no perfect script for emotions. Sometimes laughter comes easily. Other days, sincerity does. Both belong. Kelly smiled, finally returning to her playful tone. "Well," she said, "next time warn me before you make me emotional at 9 in the morning." He laughed. "You make me emotional every day." The room relaxed. The familiar chemistry returned, but now it carried new depth. During a short break, cameras caught them talking quietly off-air. No performance, just conversation. That brief moment later became what viewers discussed most, not because of what was said, but because of how comfortable they seemed simply being themselves. When the show resumed, Kelly addressed the audience directly. "We share mornings with you, so sometimes we share real feelings too. That's part of being live." She reassured viewers nothing was wrong. It was simply a reminder that even people on television grow, reflect, and learn over time. The rest of the episode returned to normal segments, cooking, entertainment news, lighthearted games, yet the tone remained warmer. The laughter felt more genuine because it followed sincerity. After the broadcast, social media filled with supportive messages. Fans appreciated seeing a quieter moment rather than constant high energy. Many said it reminded them why they had watched for so many years. The connection felt authentic. Later that day, Kelly posted a simple message. "Proud of you, always." Mark responded with a heart emoji and a joke about needing more coffee before serious conversations. The exchange perfectly captured what viewers witnessed. Not a dramatic event, not a crisis, just two people comfortable enough to be honest in front of millions. And that, more than any headline, is why the moment stayed with fans.
After that memorable broadcast, the studio felt familiar again. Upbeat music, quick camera moves, and the usual friendly banter echoing through the set. But beneath the routine, there was a noticeable shift. The crew greeted Kelly and Mark a little more warmly, almost as if everyone had shared something personal together. Before the show began, they stood near the host desk reviewing notes. Normally, they would joke about wardrobe or tease the producers about the coffee. Today, the conversation was quieter. "You okay?" Kelly asked casually, adjusting her cards. Mark smiled. "Yeah, I actually slept great." She raised an eyebrow. "So, emotional honesty works better than caffeine?" "Don't push it," he laughed. When the cameras rolled, the opening felt lighter, not forced, comfortable. Viewers immediately noticed the difference. Instead of addressing the previous day directly, they let the show breathe into normalcy. A funny story about a misplaced phone, a discussion about weekend plans, and playful teasing about who wakes up earlier at home. Halfway through the episode, a viewer message appeared on the screen. It wasn't planned. The producers had chosen it from thousands sent overnight. "Thank you for yesterday. It reminded me it's okay to admit I'm overwhelmed sometimes." Kelly paused, reading it. She glanced at Mark. He nodded gently. No dramatic reaction, just acknowledgement. "That means a lot," she said sincerely. "We never know what moments connect." Mark added, "We show up every day hoping to make people smile. Sometimes we also end up sharing something real. Both matter." The audience applauded again, but this time the energy was brighter. The conversation didn't turn heavy, it turned reassuring. They invited their next guest, a comedian, who jokingly warned them not to get emotional again because he had prepared only jokes, not tissues. The studio erupted in laughter, and Kelly leaned into the humor. "Good," she said. "We've officially returned to our regularly scheduled chaos." Throughout the episode, their rhythm felt sharper than ever. Years of partnership now carried visible trust. They interrupted each other comfortably, predicted each other's punchlines, and even disagreed about a recipe segment, which the audience loved. During a cooking demonstration, Mark insisted he could chop vegetables faster. Kelly crossed her arms. "Yesterday you were philosophical, today you're competitive again." "Balance," he replied. After the show ended, they stayed at the desk longer than usual, talking with crew members. One camera operator mentioned he'd watched the episode with his family. A stage manager admitted she'd called her sister afterward just to talk. Neither host expected that impact. They had simply had a conversation. Later that week, the producers suggested a short segment about everyday honesty, small truths people avoid saying. Instead of making it serious, they turned it playful. They read harmless confessions from viewers, hiding snacks from family members, pretending to understand group chats, setting alarms earlier than necessary just to feel productive. Kelly shared one of her own. "Sometimes I rehearse conversations in my head, and they never happen." Mark laughed. "You? Never." She nudged him. "You do it too." "Only arguments I plan to win," he replied. The light-hearted segment became popular precisely because it stayed simple. No spectacle, just recognition of ordinary life. Over the next few weeks, fans who attended the live audience mentioned the moment they first felt comfortable coming to the show again, not because it was dramatic television, but because it felt welcoming. They knew they would laugh, but also that sincerity wasn't out of place. One morning, a longtime viewer in the audience asked during the Q&A portion how they managed working together for so many years. Kelly answered first. "We learned early that you can't perform a relationship. You either respect each other or you don't." Mark added, "And sometimes respect means listening instead of filling silence." The audience grew quiet, the same attentive quiet from days before, then applauded warmly. As seasons continued, the show kept its usual humor and celebrity interviews, but small, genuine moments appeared naturally: a thoughtful pause after a guest's story, a supportive glance during a challenging topic, a joke that softened seriousness without dismissing it. Nothing felt staged. One afternoon, while wrapping up a Friday episode, Kelly looked around the studio. "You know," she said, "people think television is about big moments." Mark leaned back in his chair. "Turns out it's about consistent mornings." She smiled. "And good company." He nodded towards the audience and crew. "All of it." The credits rolled as they continued chatting off script, microphones still catching faint laughter. Viewers at home didn't rush to change channels. Many stayed through the final seconds, not waiting for news, but enjoying the atmosphere. The conversation that had begun as a simple reflection had quietly shaped the tone of the show, not louder, not sadder, just more open. And in the world of live television, that authenticity became part of its daily routine.
As the months moved forward, the show settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and slightly deeper than before. Nothing about the format had really changed. Celebrity interviews, games, cooking segments, but viewers began to notice how often the hosts let small, unscripted moments stay in the broadcast instead of rushing past them. One morning, the teleprompter briefly froze during the opening tease. In the past, they might have quickly tossed to a commercial. Instead, Kelly looked straight at the camera. "Well, this is where we prove we actually talk to each other without instructions," she joked. Mark leaned on the desk. "I was told there would always be words." "So was I," she replied. "Now you have to think." They spent nearly 2 minutes simply chatting about what they'd eaten for breakfast and debating whether weekends feel shorter as adults. The crew scrambled behind the scenes, but the audience laughed continuously. When the script returned, no one rushed. They eased back into the program naturally. Afterward, producers realized the unscripted portion had become one of the most replayed clips of the week. Later that same week, a young audience member asked how they handle days when they're tired before going live. Mark answered honestly, "You show up anyway, but you don't pretend to be superhuman." Kelly added, "Energy isn't always loud. Some mornings it's just being present." That line spread online, shared alongside short clips from the show. Viewers connected not because it was motivational, but because it sounded ordinary. Behind the scenes, their routine stayed simple. They still arrived early, still reviewed notes, still teased each other over coffee, but now they also checked in, not formally, just a quick "good morning" that actually meant "how are you today?" One day, Kelly walked in carrying a stack of papers. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Serious meeting?" "No," she said, dropping them on the desk. "Recipes I'll never cook." He laughed. "I support your commitment to ordering food." Moments like that filled the studio with an easy familiarity. The crew noticed that rehearsals were shorter because the real show happened naturally once cameras started. During a special anniversary episode, producers compiled clips from past years: old hairstyles, outdated sets, playful arguments about trivia answers. The audience laughed at how much had changed visually, yet how little had changed between the hosts. Watching the montage, Kelly covered her face at an old joke she'd forgotten. "I can't believe we said that on television," she said. Mark shrugged. "We've said a lot on television." Then she added quietly, "But we've meant most of it." The comment wasn't dramatic, but it lingered. The audience applauded softly. Toward the end of the show, instead of a grand speech, they simply thanked viewers for sharing mornings with them, not as a milestone announcement, just a routine gratitude. After the broadcast, they stayed on stage talking with audience members longer than scheduled. Some shared that they watched while getting ready for work, others with family at breakfast. A few said the show felt like background conversation in their homes. Kelly smiled at that description. "That's exactly what mornings should feel like," she said. Weeks later, another unexpected moment happened during a trivia game segment. Mark confidently answered a question and got it completely wrong. Kelly laughed. "Yesterday you were wise. Today you're confidently incorrect." He pointed at the card. "I blame the lighting." "The lighting has nothing to do with geography," she replied.
The audience roared with laughter, and Mark bowed dramatically. Instead of editing around the mistake, they replayed it at the end of the show as a highlight. Moments of honesty, humor, and small imperfections gradually defined the atmosphere more than any planned feature. Viewers didn't tune in wondering what big event might happen. They tuned in expecting a comfortable start to the day. One Friday, as the closing credits began, Kelly looked around the studio again, a habit she'd developed recently. "Another week," she said. Mark nodded. "We keep doing mornings, and people keep joining us." He smiled toward the audience, which still surprises me. She leaned back in her chair. Maybe it shouldn't. The music played, cameras widened, and they continued chatting faintly as the broadcast faded out. Not ending a story, just finishing another ordinary day that viewers had come to appreciate for exactly that reason.